Hello, TBE Network, and welcome to the TBE podcast, where we share thought-provoking stories, strategies, and ideas, as well as engage with insightful leaders from a wide range of fields and businesses across Africa. If the topics of entrepreneurship, business, startups, property, marketing, or finance interest you, then you have tuned into the right place. Welcome back, TBE followers, to episode 4 of our podcast. Today we have Michael Baretta from DotGood. DotGood is South Africa's leading cause marketing agency. They specialize in socially responsible strategies that bridge the gap between the greater good and the bottom line. They work with brands that want to make a difference and large not-for-profit organizations to create solutions that do more than just meet objectives. Uniquely geared towards finding big picture solutions, they see opportunities where others don't and care about the positive impact that good business can have on the bottom line, but more importantly, on society at large. Michael, thanks so much for joining us today. Maybe just to jump straight in, you can let us know, when did you start DotGood, and what was your vision and your purpose and your mission behind starting DotGood?
Yeah, cool. Thanks very much for having me. We've been going for about 10 years now. And my marketing career has spanned at about 20. I'm giving my age a little bit now. And I was working for the biggest brand activation agency in Africa.
Sure, yeah.
And I realized how self-serving marketing can be. And I really wanted more from my career and what I was doing. And at the time, I'd been headhunted from Cape Town to come and live up in Joburg.
Okay.
And I was immediately struck by how much litter just goes unnoticed in the city.
Maybe living here, you just kind of take it for what it is, I guess.
Totally. And I mean, 10 years later, I unfortunately think it's got worse, but I don't notice it as much necessarily. And I really wanted to do something about this litter problem that we had in our country. And at the time, there was kind of like, we were working on a brand called Nokia. I'm sure you're familiar with Nokia.
Yeah.
And they were in their heyday, and they appointed an ambassador to be a pioneer for one of their campaigns. His name was David Greer, and he ran a marathon a day along the coastline of South Africa.
A marathon a day, as in 42.2 kilometers a day.
Yeah, he was on the roads.
I bet he was at sea level.
He was on the roads, and his intent was to raise money for his NGO, which is Smiles for Smiles, which look after kids that are born with cleft parrots, which is an incredible cause. And we were doing a little agency lunch, and he told me the story about his amazing journey and his amazing venture and the amazing work that he did, and really made me feel very emotive. And I thought, this is an incredible way to convey a message through this emotive way of communicating. So I thought, why don't we combine this idea of using an emotive way to change behavior with this desire to want to clean up the country? So I came up with this idea called Trekking for Trash, which is centered around a 3,600 kilometer walk, so a similar distance that David Greer walked, but we kind of followed the coastline as closely as possible. And we collected litter every day for 7 months, and we went to schools, engaged with schools, we went to community groups, engaged with them, and showed them the importance of a clean environment and recycling. And I think it was through that journey that I realized that it is possible to build brands, to drive sales, and to do good all at the same time. And those are the pillars and principles that DotGood is built on.
Okay, that's awesome, Michael. So I assume that's how you came on to purpose-led marketing. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about what is purpose-led marketing.
Yeah, so purpose-led marketing has become very topical, I think now, post-COVID. As I said, we've been doing this for almost a decade. So I think for the first time, people that look after brands, so marketing directors and brand owners, have really felt empathy for what it feels like to be in need through the whole COVID pandemic. And I think this has really created this groundswell of a drive for purpose-led marketing. And essentially, purpose-led marketing is a mutually beneficial type of marketing. So you had above the line marketing, which was one-way marketing, and they would tell you about what it is. Now this new way of engaging is really about not only helping myself, it's about helping my beneficiaries as well, and to create mutually beneficial and longer lasting and more deeper relationships with all stakeholders involved.
Okay, and so we've all heard about like marketing campaigns and something and things along those lines within the marketing world. What kind of advice would you offer companies that were thinking about, potentially bringing on a market or outsourcing their marketing, and what should a campaign contain for a company? I'd imagine it's not a one size fits all, but maybe you can speak about just a couple elements of a campaign that DotGood would do.
Yeah, so I think as a first step, I would ask the brand or the organization, do you have a brand purpose? What do you stand for? What do you believe in beyond just making money? Why does your organization exist? And it's quite a complex thing to explain, because most people believe, we're here to sell this product, or we're here to do this. But in order to have authentic relationships with all of your stakeholders, you really need to exist beyond that. So we would help an organization to define their brand purpose. So for example, as an agency, our brand purpose is to bridge the gap between the greater good and the bottom line. So to bring those two things closer together. Once we know that our clients have a defined brand purpose, we will then develop campaigns to deliver that purpose in action. And those can take on many different channels. So we are a channel agnostic agency, or channel agnostic agency, should I say. So this could be a face-to-face, which is our area of expertise, because we really believe that face-to-face engagement is the best way to change behavior. It could be through digital engagement. It could be through upgrades. It could be through outdoor media, various different ways to communicate and to deliver that purpose in action.
But obviously key to that is the brand itself or the company itself having a very clear idea of why they are there, and then putting that in the conversation. And do you help companies, or maybe a better question is, do you go to find that some companies that you work with maybe haven't got that clear, and do you help them shape that?
Yeah, so we actually don't charge to help people shape their brand purpose, because I feel that it's our social responsibility to create a network of organizations that want to make change in the world. And it's very difficult to make change unless you know what's change you want to make, or what you stand for. So we kind of, because it really needs to come from the organization. It's not like an agency saying this is what you should do, or this is a great campaign, why don't you do this? Is what do you feel, the people in your organization, how do you feel that your brands want to exist in the world and make a difference? So we kind of like give them cues and help them to scope that, and then in some instances we will actually help with the causes that they want to partner with, or create messaging or projects that actually deliver this purpose in action. So for example, we do a lot of work in feeding, we do a lot of work in health, we do huge amounts of HIV and AIDS testing, we do diabetes testing, we do recycling projects, we do nutrition education, we could do running a great campaign at the moment about teaching kids how to be kind through a sweet brand. So it's finding the way that, yes, sugar isn't the greatest product in the world, but how do you make that brand engage better?
What are the tools that you're using to teach kids to be kinder using a sweet?
So we've created 9 principles of kindness.
Okay.
And we're using recognition and reward to reward these kids for kind behavior in line with the 9 principles that we've created. So just a fun way to kind of, it doesn't always have to be serious and heavy about saving lives. It sometimes can be light and uplifting. So we help the brands or organizations define that, and then we find clever ways to deliver that in reality.
So I mean, in the world that we live in now, obviously the past sort of, let's say, 2 years, with COVID, is there anything that you guys have been involved in that relates to that, where, I don't know, maybe you can just tell us some experiences you've had within the marketing space about your involvement with doing good within the COVID world that we live in, I guess.
So the example that springs to mind immediately is the work that we've done for Higher Health, which is the organization tasked to look after the health of students in higher education.
Okay.
So we did a lot of digital engagement, a lot of PR messaging at the start of the pandemic to communicate the misconceptions around COVID and how it's transmitted. Obviously, we've needed to reconsider how we engage with our consumers for the last 18 months or so, because we haven't been able to necessarily do as much face-to-face engagement as we wanted to. So we've obviously put in processes to try and mitigate that.
What does that look like? Because I would imagine that's quite a challenge to be able to interface with I guess your target audience in a new way.
Yeah. So, I mean, the normal spaces that we would play in would be taxi ranks, clinics, schools, and all of those places are not really conducive to engaging now. So we are doing all the usual. So social distancing if we do go to schools. We are sanitizing if we do go to schools. Clinics, we are not activating inside the clinics. We're activating outside the clinics. We're looking at various digital engagements that go directly to the consumer. And we're also looking to add value to people in different ways. So we're doing home drops, we're doing talking to nurses, talking to doctors. So maybe not necessarily to the end user or the beneficiary directly. We're looking to the people who are influencing them, equipping them with the information, making sure that information is credible and correct, and then encouraging them to pass that on as well. We've also seen that through COVID, there's been a massive need for obviously feeding. So we're running big feeding projects across the country. So not only because the brands want to give, but also it is a way for the brand to be brought into people's homes and into people's lives, so that post the pandemic, they remembered, when I was hungry, who fed me? That brand fed me while I was hungry. They didn't forget me. And how do you continue that relationship to then, again, once they are in a position to go back into the stores to buy that product, to make sure that they buy the brands that we support and that we engage with.
So that's amazing. But I wonder if some of our listeners or people that might be a bit skeptical of companies' sort of CSI initiatives and all of those things wouldn't they say, it's great that this is being done, but ultimately companies are doing this for the bottom line. You mentioned greenwashing. Tell us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I mean, ultimately it should be done for the bottom line and it should be done for the consumer, but with equal emphasis on both, because it's about creating a mutually beneficial relationship. Now, greenwashing is something that people kind of are vilified with. I don't really see it like that, because if an organization is taking a step in the right direction by saying that they're doing something, consumers and their stakeholders will pick up on that and say, oh, that's great, that's awesome, tell us more about this amazing project that you're doing. And they will quite quickly need to change their ways if they are simply greenwashing, because we know that everything's accessible at the moment through social media, through the internet. People understand a lot more about organizations and how they operate, and they will be quickly exposed unless they change their behavior.
I suppose also, as that person who's being fed, you don't really care. Like the people that are benefiting from this sort of these initiatives, I mean, ultimately they're not going to be like, oh, I'm not going to take your food parcel because I don't think it's done with sincerity.
Yeah,
it's like the good is still being done.
Yeah,
ultimately.
So I think what I would encourage brands to do is to be more sustainable with their engagement. So like a once-off. Yeah,
like a 1 week initiative might not
it's not really gonna. So what I mean, also feeding is the first step in terms of helping people to not be hungry. I don't know if that English was correct, but
I think it makes sense.
But what we're doing is we're taking that one step further. So we are teaching people about creating their own gardens in their backyard. So that old adage of giving a person a fish they'll eat for a day, teach them how to fish, they'll fish forever, right? Yeah. So we are taking food brands and we're showing people how to make food for themselves, so that they don't need to receive those weekly, monthly, however long food parcels.
And are these initiatives are they always in collaboration with your clients, or is DotGood doing anything independently of sort of client work, anything like that?
Yeah, so I mean, our purpose is very much in recycling. I think this is how the agency was born out of Trekking for Trash, which is really from my passion.
I think I actually remember reading about that somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it was a long time.
A long time ago. Yeah. But I do remember something along those lines of a walk up the coastline and
so we're very big on recycling, and also I think that we give so much more to our campaigns. So it's a really weird thing to say. We do support a couple of orphanages through our donations and the things that we do, but in terms of our way of giving back is seeing really valuable projects and staying up all night and waking up first thing in the morning and making sure that these things are running smoothly. So to make sure that they really are benefiting the beneficiary or the organization that we're servicing and our clients as well. So I think that's really the best way to describe how we give back.
Sure. I'm just trying to think of a scenario. When you bring on a client or a client finds DotGood, do you ever find that a client or a brand might be looking for traditional marketing, and then do you kind of say, hold on, there's a better way? And how does that conversation, has that ever happened, I guess, is the first question. And what does that conversation look like, where you go, look, we can spend 100,000 Rand on a billboard that overlooks the highway, but there's a better way to do this?
Yeah. So we've actually said no to clients before.
Okay.
We're quite selective about who we choose to work with. And I think that not only is because we believe that we only want to work with ethical organizations. Not saying that the people that we chose not to work with weren't ethical. We want to make sure that they share our sentiment for wanting to make a difference.
Right.
And yes, we often get asked for traditional ways of marketing, and we do. We say, like, cool, we can definitely deliver on that objectives, but why don't we look at employing this minority group that can do exactly the same as the other minority or the other people that we were going to employ? Or why don't we look at...
So it comes through even in like the suppliers that you choose.
Absolutely. So why don't we use wood here as opposed to plastic? Or why don't we make this a long-lasting container as opposed to a disposable container? Why don't we look at making this permanent as opposed to just a once-off pop-up? Or why don't we look at creating this infrastructure here that can last for years as opposed to just for a once-off event, whatever the case may be. So it may not necessarily just be in the solution that we present, but in all of the various touch points that make that solution possible.
Sure. I mean, and how do you go about finding suppliers or resources that speak to that need that DotGood has? Where, I mean, I'm just thinking of a really small example where if you needed to, I don't know, film a video for a client, and then the resource or the supplier that you use using someone from an underprivileged background, or do you guys get approached by people that are from that background? And do you know what does that look like for you guys?
Yeah. That's exactly what I tell my clients, is the benefit of having a clearly defined brand purpose is that stakeholders are attracted to you. They can feel what you stand for, and they phone you up and say, I mean, this happens on a weekly basis. We're doing this amazing project, or this is what I do. We use all recycled products, or we don't use any electricity in this process, or we don't use any water in this process, or whatever. Would you like to use us? And then it's obviously a fine balance between being cost effective for the client and then also delivering a responsible product at the end of the day.
Okay, awesome, Michael. And DotGood is a decade old, but you've been at TBE for 6 years, and now this is the TBE podcast. So we'd love to know, how has the TBE model worked for DotGood? You've obviously been here a while, so how has it worked for DotGood and the team, which I imagine expands and shrinks, and the capacity increases and decreases? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I think over the last 6 years or so, TBE staff members have really become like family, or like team members themselves, because we've been here for so long. We love the space because it's flexible. We work on projects of various scales, from a couple of 100,000 to a couple of million, and depending on the size of those projects, we need to employ obviously additional people to run them and to manage them, and we have a pool of freelancers that can do it for us. And what's great about the physical space is that we can expand, as you say, and contract depending on when we need those people. And the coffee's really great according to the team, so they love that too. And really central in terms of their location. Well, the location now, we used to be at the Rosebank in Jan Smuts, and now we're in the Rosebank in Oxford. No more than 5 minutes drive from home, which is great for me.
Awesome. Well, Michael, it's been a pleasure having you on episode 4 of the TB podcast. Maybe just to end off, you can let us know where people can reach you, if they want to shoot you a mail, get in touch. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I think I'd be happy to field the emails myself. So please feel free to pop me an email at michael@dotgood.co.za, or check us out on our website if you want to learn more. It's www.dotgood.co.za, or check us out on socials, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Awesome. Michael, thanks so much. We'll chat to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.